The behaviorist that I chose to research was Dr. Joel E. Ringdahl. Dr. Ringdahl received his BS in psychology from the University of Florida. He received his MS and PhD from Louisiana State University. He conducted research and taught at University of Iowa and Southern Illinois University. He's been the associate editor for the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. He's been an editorial board member for Research in Developmental Disabilities in Education and Treatment of Children. And currently, Dr. Ringdahl is an associate professor in the Department of Communication Sciences and Special Education at University of Georgia. He works for the Center of Autism and Behavioral Education at UGA. He continues to do research in behavioral science. He continues to peer review articles and is a researcher on NIH-funded projects. Some of Dr. Ringdahl's research interests include individuals with intellectual disabilities and autism, specifically individuals with severe, aggressive, or problem behaviors, treatment of behaviors and how to decrease them, as well as other variables that could impact the maintenance of the treatment, severe behavior and treatment, functional analysis, functional communication training, and stimulus preference assessments. The importance of Dr. Ringdahl's research as related to ABA is he is best known for his research with aggressive behavior as well as functional communication training. His research with FCT proved that FCT outcomes can be varied by man topographies, and it also provides an initial basis for conducting evaluations of response options when implementing FCT programming for problem behavior. Dr. Ringdahl's research provides an overview of important topics related to ABA as well as its use with regards to childhood aggression and self-injurious behavior, especially those children with developmental disabilities. He's proved how negative reinforcement was more effective in increasing on-task behavior when used with the appropriate schedule. His research has shown negative side effects of negative reinforcement, such as incidental reinforcement of problem behavior. With regards to aggression as a social function, his research has proved that there needs to be further studies on automatic reinforcement. And he has shown that environmental enrichment was an effective treatment of self-injurious behavior with a non-social function as related to stimulus preference. One of the studies that Dr. Ringdahl conducted was called Resurgence, the Unintended Maintenance of a Problem Behavior. The purpose of this study was to examine the maintenance of behavior as well as variables affecting behavior. Additionally, the goal was to educate teachers, researchers, and parents on how to program and achieve the maintenance of appropriate behavior. This was done using methods for justifying the effects of resurgence. Several examples of resurgence from basic and applied literatures and factors influencing resurgence were explored. The results of this study explain the importance of consistency of implementing effective treatments is imperative when a successful strategy is found to reduce a behavior problem and increase the use of appropriate strategies. It is important to spread the information to the necessary people working with the individuals. When knowledge grows in resurgence, we may learn how to avoid the resurgence of this negative behavior when the treatment is challenged. Another study conducted by Dr. Ringdahl was an evaluation of generalization of MANS during FCT. This was one of the many studies he has conducted related to FCT. The purpose of this study was to evaluate the generalization of MANS during functional communication training as well as sign language training to evaluate a training procedure based on stimulus control in order to teach signs manually. He did this was conducted through sign language training being executed in one functional context using positive reinforcement by attention while continuing the functional analysis conditions in two other contexts, positive reinforcement through a tangible item and negative reinforcement by escape. The results of this study showed that a specific combination of prompt schedules and concurrent schedules of reinforcement impacted response allocation among man topographies. Dr. Ringdahl also did research with regards to reinforcers. One study was an evaluation of resistance to change with conditioned and unconditioned reinforcers. The purpose of this study was to examine multiple reinforcement-related variables which influence a response's resistance to change. In order to do this, there were several experiments conducted. Experiment 1 was unconditioned and conditioned reinforcers of equal preference were identified. Experiments 2, 3, and 4, the participants' behavior was reinforced during a baseline phase using a multiple schedule with either conditioned, such as tokens, or unconditioned, such as food reinforcements. The disruptors included extinction, distraction, and pre-feeding. The results showed that the various forms of reinforcers, both conditioned and unconditioned, resulted in different resistance to change, alternative of prior findings. The results show the need for more research in evaluating the effects of the reinforcement type on resistance to change within various settings. Experiments 2 and 3 indicated that behaviors are more resistant to extinction and distraction with conditioned reinforcers. Experiment 4 showed that when pre-feeding disrupted responding, the behaviors were more resistant to change with unconditioned reinforcers than with conditioned reinforcers. Another study was differential reinforcement with and without instructional feeding. In this study, the purpose was to observe the effects of differential reinforcement of alternative behaviors, DRA, with and without instructional feeding on participants' task-related problem behavior. To do this, the examiners used a single-subject multi-element design. They observed the participants in different settings using DRA with instructional feeding in a therapy room. Instructions were provided on a gradually increasing schedule starting at 15 minutes per 45-minute break, as well as instructional feeding in a classroom with instructions provided every other minute, and those in compliance received a 1-minute break. The results showed that the DRA with instructional feeding decreased problem behaviors and increased on-task behaviors. Another study was assessment and treatment of aggressive behavior without a clear social function. The purpose of this was to determine the function of behavior on the aggressive behaviors of 2 male participants. The results showed that while functional analysis was able to conclude that the aggression was sensitive to social reinforcers, the functional analysis was not able to determine the function of the aggression. The study also showed that automatic reinforcement as a function of aggression needs to be studied further. If I were to interview Dr. Ringdahl, there are several questions that I would ask him. I would ask which research study he has conducted that stands out the most and why. What made him decide to go into studying behavior, particularly aggression in children with disabilities? Are there any studies he is currently conducting? What would be his advice to someone who is just starting in the field of behavior analysis? What has been his favorite position to work in and why? And I would ask that most of the research I have looked at had him conducting studies in children. I would want to know if he has done studies with adults, and if not, why. This concludes my research on Dr. Joel E. Ringdahl.